Part 4 of the S-50 restoration. Time to tackle the Keybed. Okay, as far as I can tell, there are 6 screws that hold the keyboard in place. There are 2 there, 2 there, and 2 there. Now, as you can see, somebody has already been at the keyboard in this particular synth. I suspect it was previous owner. Because there are 2 screws missing, so we're going to have to replace those. But the other 4 screws come out. There's 3. Now, people have said to me, why don't I use an electric screwdriver? And I'll be very candid with you. The reason I don't use an electric screwdriver for doing a lot of this stuff is because you run the risk of crossing threads. And these are machined bolts or machined screws. I suspect they're, well, I can tell you exactly what they are because I'll get the gauge on them in a little while. But they look very much like they're M bolts. And if you put them in with an electric screwdriver, or take them out with an electric screwdriver, you run the risk of crossing the threads, which means it's going to make the thing harder to assemble and disassemble in the future. That's the reason why I don't use an electric screwdriver. I use a trusted ratchet screwdriver, which is this one here, which I've shown on the channel before, but I'll put a link to but down below. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. Okay, I flipped the keyboard over. Keyboard is not loose. It's loose one end up here, but it's not loose the other end. And I suspect there are these 4 bolts are meant to be there to retain it. So I'm going to take those out as well. And again, looking at these bolts, there's 2 already taken out, so that means somebody's been here before me. Right, that feels much looser, so I now flip it back over and let's see if we can get the keybed out. So the keyboard is definitely looser, but we need to disconnect the ribbon cable which is attached to it, so just use a pair of cutters. That one's quite tightly in. Don't want to damage the ribbon cable, and I don't want to damage the keyboard. Let me get some thinner cutters. So they come out, they're to be replaced, and the ribbon cable is loose. Now, there is definitely something still holding the keyboard in place. What I can't see is what it is. But whatever it is, it's about here. So, there's a screw there. There's screws still on the back, coming up from underneath. There is a rail underneath here with a screw, and I can't see how to get to that screw or that rail. It all seems to be fairly self-contained, but where is that screw coming from? Interesting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take the keys off and put them to one side. They should just pop off, says he, once released. Now I understand what's going on. In order to get the keybed out, I've got to take this main board out. That's why it's not coming up. Okay, so it looks like we've got to take the main board out, and that is held in by 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 5, 6, 7 screws. Now the question is it held 1, 2 there? Yeah. Plus a couple of screws from the back. Right, let's get cracking on this. Okay, looking at this, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws to take out on the back. So these 2 screws hold the SCSI cover. I haven't got a SCSI option fitted, but that's where it would go if it were fitted. Like so. And then this one holds the top of the RGB socket. Different screw. This one holds the MIDI socket against the board. Again, different screw. So that should now release the motherboard from the back of the case. Now I'm going to try and get away with not taking the board out fully, just moving it so I can get the keybed out. So I don't have to disconnect all these wires that are, I mean that's the keybed wires, but these wires, etc. That's what I'm going to try and do. We shall see if I achieve that. Now I don't know whether these are actually holding the board down or not. Yeah, I think they are. So they're going to have to come out as well. Okay, I'm not sure whether this is viewable on camera, but these are, I believe, the 3 sets of connectors that go off to the keyboard. There is a 4th connector, but I think that goes off over there somewhere. So I think it's just these 3. So what I do all the time when I do this sort of stuff is get a phone or an iPad and take pictures of the cables in situ, and then like I did with the other connectors, I'm just going to mark these. And then it's just a case of disconnecting these from the board. And they're normally, you need to exert a reasonable amount of force, but they should normally just come out fairly easily. Now I should be able to wiggle the keybed out of the keyboard. What else have I got? Anything else connected? Clear this end. What else have we got? Aha! The Aftertouch circuitry, which weaves its way round there. Well, again, I'm not sure whether this is coming across on camera. It goes from here, it goes under the leg of this end panel and then joins the circuitry there. And I have two options. I can either take it off the circuit board, or I can take it off the Aftertouch strip. I think it's probably easier to take it from here. And freeze the keyboard. We'll put the keyboard on the bench, but what we will do for the time being what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly put this back in position. Okay, the reason why I've done that is very simple. I want to move the keyboard off the bench and I don't want this flopping about inside, so I've just lightly secured it so it doesn't move, so that can be taken off the bench, which means I can bring this back on the bench. I'm not going to bore you with de-springing this, but to be clear, the springs for the black keys are different to the keys, the springs for the white keys. So what I would do is you use a screwdriver or some other device like this, and effectively what you would do to get the springs off is it one of two ways, but you've got to get them back on again. So just use the screwdriver to lift them off, take the spring off, and put it somewhere safe. Now, while I do that, I'm going to switch the camera off because it would be boring otherwise. So that's one black spring, one white spring, and away we go. In order to get the keys out, you need to unlock the keys, and what there is there's a little plastic strip that runs along the back here, and to get into that we need to take off this metal case that makes the keybed solid. We do that by undoing that screw and that screw. That allows that to come off, and it then exposes this plastic strip. And what we need to do is to gently lever this. Now I'm not sure whether the easiest thing is just to lever it so that the key will release, like so. That's probably the easiest way to do this. It's probably the wrong thing to do, but it does allow the keyboard to release, or the keys to release. Like so. And what the keys do is they pull, effectively you pull them towards of course when you get to this point the key straddles, so you need to lift the plastic on the other side. And that will allow the next set of keys to drop out. There's something quite satisfying about stripping a keyboard down. So that's all the keys now taken out of the chassis, and it gets me to the contact strip and all the grommets. As you can see, it is utterly filthy. Do that to the camera, maybe you can see that. It needs a damn good clean. Not sure whether I've got to replace these bushings or not, but we'll see. Obviously the case is very rusty, so it needs to be treated, which I'll do. And obviously this contact board needs to be looked at, but that's a job for another night. The key point was these lock-in strips, which I'm going to need to clean, de-glue, and then be able to glue those back into place when I put the keys back in. And I know I've put them in order, but there's really no reason. The only two keys you need to be aware of is this key, which is one at one end of the keyboard, and this key, which is the key at the other end of the keyboard. And as long as you understand how to put a keyboard back together in terms of notes and flats, you can do that yourself. One of the things you'll notice that these are utterly filthy. So they are going to go into a bucket of warm soapy water and be washed. So that hopefully will clean those up while I work out what I'm going to do with these circuit boards. Part of me says take them off and wash them because they're that filthy. Small toothbrush and a warm bucket of soapy water, and I think that's probably what I'm going to do actually. How do they disconnect? What is it? Okay, so it's little poppers is how they're connected. Yeah, I think I'm going to wash them so that we can get them clean. It could be that the reason why I'm having problems is because they're so filthy. I mean, they are filthy, and it's obvious that liquid has been poured through the keyboard, which is why it's rusty. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, before I took the keys out, you can't probably see it on camera, but I actually marked the positions of the problem keys. I'm going to look at all the tracks, if I'm honest, but they are the positions of the problem tracks. So we'll see what comes of the next part of this video. That's about it for part 4. We'll get into part 5, which will be about restoring the keybed itself. So for now, live long and prosper, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.